We start with a point.
Hi, it's Rob Bryanton, and welcome back to the Imagining the 10th Dimension video blog. And today we're talking about the shaman. And so I'm not a shaman, but shamans are people who play with the idea that there's more to our reality than just what we see around us, that there's higher dimensional shapes and spirits and things that are influencing us. So that's what we're kind of representing today with the background that we've got for me here. I've quoted author and psychobiologist David J. Brown before, who had some very kind things to say about my book, and I'm going to quote from him here again. Rob Bryanton's Imagining the 10th Dimension is one of the most brilliantly conceived and mind-stretching books that I've ever encountered. Bryanton presents a uniquely compelling model of our 10-dimensional universe that allows one to visualize and grasp the topography of the higher dimensions in a step-by-step manner. This is must-reading for anyone interested in the philosophy of physics, shamanic exploration, or the nature of reality. And again, that's from David J. Brown. Thank you, David. Last time, we talked about augmented reality, new technology which allows us to visualize things that aren't part of our physical world. This time, I'd like to look at David J. Brown's suggestion that my way of visualizing reality is useful for people interested in shamanism. There's an extensive article on this subject in Wikipedia, and here's one sentence that I think is key. Shamanism is based on the premise that the visible world is pervaded by invisible forces or spirits which affect the lives of the living. The idea that our reality is created by extra-dimensional patterns and shapes is, of course, central to my project. Whether one thinks of those as invisible forces or something more metaphysical, I've been insisting, may have more to do with point of view than what it is we're really describing. Regardless, though, a shaman's viewpoint has to embrace the basic idea that I've been promoting here, that there is much more to our reality than the 3D world we see around us, and finding ways to visualize how that could be requires us to embrace a perspective which is outside of time and outside of space. What I think is remarkable, though, is that this same timeless viewpoint has been central to the theories of many of the great scientific minds of the 20th century. We've talked about this before in entries like wormholes and dimensional folding and scrambled eggs. Have you ever heard of Black Elk? He was a Lakota medicine man who lived from 1863 to 1950. While there appear to be varying opinions on whether it's proper to call Black Elk a shaman, I would say there are strong connections between this man's transcendent viewpoint and what is referred to as shamanism in other parts of the world. There's a well-known book called Black Elk Speaks, which recounts his visions and insights in what some are calling the most famous Native American book ever written. A YouTube visitor named Crazed Mystic posted the following quote from Black Elk Speaks on one of my video blogs here on YouTube a few weeks ago. Then I was standing on the highest mountain of them all, and round about beneath me was the whole hoop of the world. And while I stood there, I saw more than I can tell, and I understood more than I saw, for I was seeing in a sacred manner the shapes of all. I love this quote, not just because it speaks to the unfolded nature of reality, which I'm constantly going on about, but because it states it in such a beautiful way. I've tried to portray similar ideas about the connectedness that we all share and the beautiful hoop, the zero that holds all other possibilities in so many other entries. Going to the light, T equals zero, imagining the omniverse, and the Big Bang and the Big O, to name just a few. What else is central to the shamanistic experience? It's impossible to generalize too much because shamans appear in various cultures throughout the world. Still, music, trance, and altered states of consciousness can all play a large role. Have you ever been in a drum circle? This is one of those things that comedians like to make fun of, but there really is something there. The power of the drum, the shared experience of a large group of people becoming physically and mentally entrained through just drumming together, and the trance-like altered states of consciousness that can spring from such an experience can be surprisingly uplifting. One of my favorite books about all this was written by Mickey Hart, well-known musicologist and drummer for the Grateful Dead, called Drumming at the Edge of Magic. Now, altered states of consciousness, of course, can be brought about through various natural means, including dance or meditation or through more traumatic experiences. But for many people, the phrase makes psychedelics spring to mind immediately. Now, we started this blog with a quote from David J. Brown, and as we discussed in David J. Brown and Psychedelics, David is a respected expert on psychedelics and their serious study. He's also sometimes a guest editor of the newsletter published by the Multidisciplinary Association of Psychedelic Studies, which you can find at maps.org. Which brings us to Terence McKenna, who some have referred to as a modern shaman. Now, if you're reading along here, I'm going to provide a link to a very interesting video showing Terence McKenna talking about shamanism in a way that seems very related to what I've been talking about here. McKenna tells us that a shaman would have to be able to tune into the bifurcating trees of possibility, that's his words, that are coming towards them from beyond the solid reality that they see around them. I'd like to think that McKenna would have appreciated the connections between what he's talking about there and the way that I've portrayed the fifth dimension as being part of our probability space in entries like Dr. Mel's 4D glasses and predicting the future. In entries like the holographic universe and slices of reality, I've also described the fifth dimension as the place where we can see the underlying patterns of our reality are springing from, another related idea. And speaking of augmented reality, in a fanciful moment, I find myself wondering if we'll ever get to the point where certain psychedelic experiences could be simulated using an augmented reality interface to superimpose those effects over top of the world we see around us. Now that would be quite the software program. It really is too bad that Terence McKenna passed away in 2000, well before the advent of YouTube, as he has some fascinating presentations out there that are finding a new audience now through the medium of streaming video. But without his participation in the dialogue, we're deprived of that instant feedback loop that can make YouTube and its comment sections so interesting. So to close, we're just going to provide links to a few more Terence McKenna videos. If you do have a chance to watch them, please do. You Are the Center of the Mandala, Changing Your Operating System are the two videos that I want you to look at. So next time, we're going to take just a little bit of a side journey here with an entry that's called Urban Garden Magazine, and then after that we'll get back to Modern Shamans. My name's Rob Bryanton. Enjoy the journey. Hi friends, just a reminder that you can now buy a 6 DVD set of my video blogs at 10thdimension.com/store.